but they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. As they stood there puzzled, two men suddenly appeared to them, clothed in dazzling robes. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. Then the men asked, "Why are you looking among the dead for someone who is alive? He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Remember what he told you back in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be betrayed into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and that he would rise again on the third day." Then they remembered that he had said this. So they rushed back from the tomb to tell the 11 disciples and everyone else what had happened. Jesus is alive. And the rest, they say, is history. Please turn your Bibles to 1 Corinthians 15. It's good to be together today. This is the Lord's Day. And there's been a lot leading up to it. At least in my children's school at Bruntsville Primary, 2 weeks ago, the children in my daughter Ella's class had been practicing for many weeks, and then they put on this Easter play for the parents, for the other students. There were multiple performances. This was the P4 class, and as you see there on the microphone, that's my daughter Ella. And her role in this play, which she was rather excited about, she was cast in the role of the ugly duckling. But we all know that that's a happy ending to that one. She had a hard time finding friends to play with because of the way she looked, and the growth process was still happening. But by the end, she was this beautiful swan. This attractive, stunning swan. And you know, in this P4 children's play, it was fascinating. You had children from all races, from all cultures, and even more so, you had children from all different religious backgrounds. And I'm hearing them teach us the story of Jesus, his life, what he stood for, how he died. And then they teach us that Jesus rose from the dead. It's a captivating story, and perhaps the most inspiring story ever written. But what if this was more than just a cute children's play? What if the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus is really true? Many know the story. Children can teach us the story, but what if it's true? And what if it's really true that those that follow Jesus also can defeat death? Think about the implications. Think about the implications for these children that perform this play. The implications of whether when they get older, will they believe or will they not believe? The implications if this story is true. Consider that. And I would dare say, I don't know all of you, but I would say none of us have ever witnessed a resurrection firsthand. I don't think we've seen that. And so that leads to the question, well, what will a resurrection look like? Okay? What is this? It's a great story, and maybe I believe it, maybe I don't. I don't know if I think about it much, but the story's there. What if it's true? And if it is, okay, how is this really going to happen? I mean, I haven't seen this, so what's it going to look like? Someone coming back from the dead. Let's look for answers here. Let's look in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We're going to read in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 35, and I'm reading today from the Message. It's a paraphrase of the Bible, but in my study of 1 Corinthians 15, I would say this paraphrase holds up the integrity of this passage. So let's read together verse 35 of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Well, some skeptic is sure to ask, "Show me how resurrection works." Give me a diagram. Draw me a picture. What does this resurrection body look like? If you look at this question closely, you realize how absurd it is. There are no diagrams for this type of thing. We do have a parallel experience in gardening. You plant a dead seed. Soon, there's a flourishing plant. There's no visual likeness between the seed and the plant. You can never guess what a tomato would look like by looking at a tomato seed. What we plant in the soil and what grows out of it, they don't look anything alike. The dead body that we bury in the ground and the resurrection body that comes from it will be dramatically different. Verse 39. You will notice that the variety of bodies is stunning. Just as there are different kinds of seeds, there are different kinds of bodies, humans, animals, birds, fish, each unprecedented in its form. You get a hint. You get a hint at the diversity of resurrection glory by looking at the diversity of bodies, not only on the earth, but in the skies. Sun, moon, stars, all these varieties of beauty and brightness. And get this, we're only looking at pre-resurrection seeds. Who can imagine what the resurrection plants will be like? Verse 42. This image of planting a dead seed and raising a live plant is a mere sketch at best, but perhaps it will help in approaching the mystery of the resurrection body. But only if you keep in mind that when we're raised for good, alive forever. The corpse that's planted is no beauty at all. But when it's raised, it's glorious. Put in the ground weak, it comes up powerful. The seed is sown natural, but the seed is grown supernatural. Same seed, same body, but what a difference from when it goes down in physical mortality to when it is raised up in spiritual immortality. So back to the question, what will a resurrected human being look like? Hopefully that helps us. Paul tells us here to look at creation. Open your eyes, look at creation for a parallel experience, a parallel example to better understand your potential as a human being for resurrection. So look to creation if you want to understand better what resurrection could be for you. There's no diagram for your resurrection. This is beyond science, but we can look to nature from it and learn. We do get a strong hint at the diversity of resurrection glory by looking at seeds, by looking at insects, looking at animals. There are scientific facts that point to the resurrection. I showed this last week. We'll back up here. There it is. These are just wild flowers growing near the Kelpies in Falkirk. And I remind you, no human being had anything to do with this. They are not there, and then all of a sudden they're there. They grow. And what the beginning looks like with these, it's nothing like this final product that you see here. And then, you saw a sneak peek of this. These are acorns. Do they look anything like this? So they start as an acorn. They fall to the ground, they're dead. Then they grow up into this glorious oak tree. That's the end result. And then perhaps the most famous one that we have in nature is what we see in this metamorphosis of a caterpillar to a butterfly. You look at the caterpillar on the far left, it looks nothing like the butterfly right next to it, but it's the same insect. So if we look to nature, we can see that what something starts as and what it gets to, there's a glorious process that happens there, and that we can look to creation to get hints of what our potential resurrection could be. All the pictures I showed you from the beginning to the end, they're all very different, but they're related because they all lead to something much more glorious. Now I'm going to have some fun with this. I have 3 children. These are not in order. Now, for those of you who don't know me and never met my children, bear with us for a moment. I just wanted to have a moment of a guessing game. Can you identify which child is which? I have 3 children. I have Nate, who's a boy, then I have 2 girls, Ella and Charlotte. Now, one of them was kind of a giveaway, I think. Yes. Right? Okay. So, who would you say is, which one of my kids, who's that on the far left? Ella, would you say, anyone disagree with Ella?
Charlotte.
Poor guy. So, your first instinct was correct. It's Ella. Yeah, that's Ella on the far left. Now, here's where it gets trickier. Especially for the person that called out Nate for the first one. So we have 2 children left. We have Nate and we have Charlotte. Which one's which out of the next 2 pictures?
Nate's in the middle.
Who thinks that's Nate in the middle? Raise your hand. Who's bold enough to say that's Charlotte in the middle? I like people that go against the grain. Confidence, you know. Yeah, that's Nate in the middle. And then Charlotte on the far right. But I remember the birth of all 3 of our babies. And as we prepared to have those babies, each one of them, you know, it's a process. You know, we're getting the room ready. We're painting the room, we're rearranging the furniture, we're getting the baby bed together, we're buying extra supplies, we're getting clothes for them. You know, we have the hospital bag packed in advance. And trust me, that's very important, at least on the first 2 as we were figuring things out. Because, you know, there would be a cramp or there would be some pains, and we're getting close to the 40th week, so it's like, okay, this is it. It's time. And there were about, 4 times that we went to the hospital and we checked in and false alarm. You know, but better safe than sorry. But you do that, and you know, every time there was a cramp or there was a pain there as we got close to the 40th week, we weren't sitting around going, well, I think it's just a virus. I don't really believe in this baby thing. You know, maybe she's, you know, like, I know your stomach's bigger, but this really couldn't happen. Like, you didn't have it, now you do, and there's going to be a human being come at you. Come on, it's just, you have some pains now, we're just going to stay home. You probably just, you have an upset stomach. Or, you know, we don't need to buy all these clothes. I mean, this is impossible. How is a baby going to come out of you? How's this going to happen? Why are we even preparing? But that's not how we were. We knew in our minds, God willing, a baby is coming. So we need to be ready. This is real. This is on. This is going to happen. A new human being is going to come out. You know, and we never once had any of our friends come up to us and go, well, you know what? I'm not getting you any gifts for the baby. I don't believe in this baby thing. I'm not into it. It's too hard to believe that are you claiming that you suddenly can produce another human being out of your body? I'm not getting you any presents. See, we didn't have anyone do that with us. You know, I've never met anyone that thinks that way. Have you? That's because we believe it. We don't need a diagram to believe in childbirth. It's crazy. It's a phenomenon of life. It's hard to explain, but we believe it. You know, babies are born all the time. 500,000 babies will be born today. More than 300 babies were born in the last minute alone. So you think back, the caterpillar mysteriously changes into this butterfly. This dead acorn resurrects and grows into this majestic oak tree. And then you have a few microscopic cells. They transform into this 7-pound human being that can think, that can feel, and has a soul. So in the same way, that corpse, that dead body that's planted into the ground, it's not at all beautiful. But when it's raised, it's glorious. You put it down in the ground, it's weak. It comes up powerful. Blaise Pascal, he's much smarter than me, one of the greatest mathematicians and philosophers that mankind has known. I mean, this guy is so smart, he has a triangle named after him. All right? Blaise Pascal and his triangle, all right? So, he's smart. This is his quote, having to do with some of the things we're talking about, and what is resurrection, and can we believe it? What's it going to be like? He says, what reason have they for saying that we cannot rise from the dead? I ask you, what is more difficult, to be born or to rise again? That what has never been should be, or that what has been should be again? Is it more difficult to come into existence than to return to it? Habit makes the one appear easy to us. Want of habit makes the other seem impossible. What if? What if this legend of the story of Jesus and his resurrection is really true? Christian musician Lecrae recently said this: if the resurrection did not really happen, I've wasted my life. But if the resurrection of Jesus really did happen, you've wasted eternity. Let me finish our lesson here. We're going to continue reading in 1 Corinthians 15. We're going to go down to verse 51, still reading from the paraphrase. 1 Corinthians 15, chapter 15, verse 51. But let me tell you something wonderful. A mystery I'll probably never fully understand. We're not all going to die, but we all are going to be changed. Verse 52. You hear a blast, the end of all blasts from a trumpet, and then the time that you look up and blink your eyes, it's over. On signal from that trumpet from heaven, the dead will be up and out of their graves, beyond the reach of death, never to die again. At the same moment, in the same way, we will all be changed. In the resurrection scheme of things, this has to happen. Everything perishable taken off the shelves and replaced by the imperishable. The mortal replaced by the immortal. Then the saying will come true: death swallowed by triumphant life. Who got the last word, O death? O death, who's afraid of you now? It was sin that made death so frightening, and law code guilt that gave sin its leverage, its destructive power. But now, in a single victorious stroke of life, all three, sin, guilt, death, are gone. The gift of our Master, Jesus Christ. Thank God. So, with unshakable confidence, with great, immeasurable confidence. This is what you can look forward to if you are in Christ. Funerals become graduation ceremonies. Death becomes the true birth canal to life. If you are a true follower of Jesus, if you are obeying Him, following Him, learning from Him, if you are in Christ, you're invincible. Now, if you've been up and down, in and out of the church, not really sure, ups and downs, or perhaps you desire to become a Christian, please make a decision today to get some help.
Amen.
Get help. That's what we all need. Make a decision. Speak with someone here and exchange your numbers, have some coffee, and talk about this. What does it mean to really believe this? Not just intellectually, but your life indicates that you believe this. Let's discuss what belief in this really means. Let's discover true Christianity together. Please make that decision today. Then we have in verse 58. With all of this going for us, my dear friends, stand your ground. Don't hold back. Throw yourselves into the work of the Master, confident that nothing you do for Him is a waste of time or effort. Be comforted with that. Stand firm. Work for the Master. Confident knowing that nothing at all you do for Him is a waste of time. It's not in vain. It's significant. I'll conclude with this quote, and then we'll share communion together. It's from an American preacher named Ben Hayden. He says, "I was thinking about death. We hate death. We'll do anything, pay anything, just to postpone death a few hours. But suppose you couldn't die. Do you know what that would mean? The blind would remain blind. The paralyzed would never walk. The children with mental disabilities would never have a normal mind. The injustices of this world would continue to prevail. That which is crooked would remain crooked and never be straightened. The last would remain last. The first would remain first. And the least would remain the least. And those terminally ill would remain ill but never terminate. And aching hearts would continue to ache and never be healed. Suppose we could not die. Wouldn't that be horrible? But also inside of us, each one of us yearns for a life not measured by years or by flesh. We yearn to have another crack at life. We yearn to do it all over again, but to do it so differently. What if? What if the resurrection really is true? For those that believe, this is not some vague hope. This is the unchanging promise of the Almighty God.